The Galactic Concorde's high seat station was a marvel of alien engineering, an orbiting citadel wreathed in light, boasting 1,000 languages, each etched into panels of gold and obsidian that shimmered like thoughts not yet spoken. And into this teeming cathedral of diplomacy walked a man in a gray suit. He was the only representative from Earth. No delegation, no aides, just a lone figure with polished shoes, calm eyes, and a paper bag of oatmeal raisin cookies. The aliens noticed. Oh, they noticed. The chamber was crescent-shaped, seats arranged in a rising arc, each filled with emissaries from a different world. There were the feather-crested Okatharis, six-eyed diplomats, with voices like rustling silk. Beside them sat the Ilian twins from the magnetic reefs of Norris Prime, levitating in perfect meditative stillness. Farther up, the Glaric ambassador lolled in his chair, a gelatinous mass covered in ceremonial fungus. He emitted a wet squelch that was either a sneeze or a scoff. They all watched the man in the suit. He set the cookies down carefully on the central table. Then he took a breath, smiled with the kind of warmth that made galaxies lean forward, and said, "John Vardes, Consultant, Earth. I brought snacks." No one spoke for several heartbeats, not even the translator drones. Then a shrill voice crackled through the air. "Is that customary? Offering baked goods at a council summit regarding mass planetary casualties." It was the Glaric. Vardes turned toward him, still smiling. "Well, Ambassador," he said, voice syrupy smooth, "where I come from, it's polite to offer something sweet before saying something that'll sour the room." A few diplomats blinked. One of the Oanari turtles gave a slow, rumbling chuckle. A silent panel on the wall lit up, displaying the subject of today's emergency session. In understated red text, it read, "Rogue Zaraki Offensive Earth Casualty Report. Sector D17, 67 dead miners." The room chilled. The tension thickened. The moderator, an ageless being of light known as Ishali, rose slightly from her floating dais. "The Galactic Council recognizes Earth," she intoned. "You may speak, John Vardes." He didn't rise, just adjusted his cuffs and folded his hands. "Thank you, Madam Moderator. Earth acknowledges the Council's concern. We have read the official transcript of regret from the Zaraki Empire. We have reviewed their claim of rogue operation and logistical error." He looked up, and for the first time, the smile dimmed just enough to cast a shadow. Children counselors. 17 of them had lost their parents to earlier skirmishes. 24 were under the age of 6. There was a birthday that day, balloons, cake. One of them liked space dinosaurs. Several species shifted awkwardly in their seats. Vardes's voice never rose, never sharpened. But it pressed. The targeting systems used were Zaraki military grade. The station was registered in Concorde records as a protected humanitarian outpost. No weapons, no shield systems. A rustle spread among the council members, some disturbed, some feigning concern, some barely containing boredom. From the upper dais, the Zaraki ambassador finally spoke. Lord Kraltor, tall and plated in shining carapace, his voice a thrum of metallic disdain. "Earth grieves well. Perhaps too well. Tragedy should be acknowledged, yes, but so should proportion. This was an unfortunate accident." Vardes tilted his head ever so slightly. "Your language is fascinating. Did you know in English, the word accident originally came from a root meaning to fall upon?" He smiled again. "Funny, isn't it, how often accidents involve bombs?" Kraltor's mandibles clacked in irritation. Another alien, a soft-spoken Isri mathematician, attempted to mediate. Perhaps reparations could be. "We already received your gesture," Vardes interrupted gently. "An intergalactic fruit basket. Very thoughtful." He paused. "Let it hang," though it did contain pineapple, which is, frankly, an act of war in certain corners of Nebraska. A few beings laughed uneasily. The Ilian twins smiled with all 6 lips. The moderator frowned. "Earth's formal stance, please." Vardes stood, straightened his tie. The silence inhaled. "Earth has no desire for war," he said. That at least drew nods. relief. He continued. But Earth also remembers. There it was. That's the part that's hard for some of you to grasp. You live 10,000 years, some of you. You trade memories like pearls. You think we forget like we bleed, quick and quiet. He stepped forward, one hand in his pocket. We don't forget. We archive. On cue, the lights dimmed. A projected holovid flickered into being above the council chamber. A child's drawing, charred at the edges. A crooked house, a stick figure with stars in its eyes. Home written beneath. The room froze. We don't want revenge, he said. We want consequence. One of the Okatharis fluttered his crests. Is that a threat, consultant? Vardes raised an eyebrow. That's such an aggressive word. I prefer promise. The moderator cleared her throat. Then may Earth clarify its request to the council? He nodded, voice soft. We request no sanctions. No diplomatic actions. No coordinated response. There was a silence, so thick it nearly buckled gravity. Krall Tor let out a scornful hiss. Then what do you ask, Earthling? Vardes looked him dead in all four eyes and said, Time. A pause. To write a strongly worded letter. A few counselors laughed, relieved, if only for a moment. The Oanari representative leaned forward. Your tone is inconsistent, human. What game are you playing? Vardes smiled again, that slow, smooth southern curl of lips that should not unsettle anyone. And yet did. No game, he said. I'm just a consultant. He took a cookie, nibbled. Just here to help. Behind him, the holovid switched frames, footage from a Terran facility, deep underground. Power surging through cables. A name lit up briefly across a command screen. Protocol Raven active. But the chamber didn't see it. Only the tiniest flicker in Vardes's pupils as he took another bite. Earth is peaceful, he said, almost wistfully. We have gardens, music, barbecue competitions. We hold hands when storms. His voice grew quieter. But when we bury children, we remember their names. He placed a small, folded paper on the central dais. A list. 67 names. The moderator scanned it. For once, she faltered. This is not a political document. It's a roll call, Vardes said. He walked back to his seat. Saturday. The room watched him like one might watch a forest, beautiful, still, and hiding something. Finally, the moderator whispered, Council will deliberate and render verdict within one planetary cycle. Vardes gave a small bow. Take your time. But do hurry. The aliens glanced among themselves. What did that mean? Hurry to do what? The council dispersed slowly, muttering in frequencies both sonic and psychic. Only the Oanari elder lingered near Vardes as he packed his bag. You smile like peace, the elder murmured, but your words carry shadow. Vardes offered a cookie. We're complicated. The elder didn't take it. He studied the human's eyes. Saw something ancient and surgical there. Not rage. Worse, restraint. Your people are not what we thought. Most of us aren't, Vardes agreed. But the ones you should fear are the ones who bake before battle. And then he was gone, briefcase swinging gently, footsteps echoing soft as silk over the obsidian floor. Above the station, in orbit's quiet cradle, a Terran ship turned its belly toward the stars. Small, unarmed, but deep inside its belly, something old and methodical had awakened. Something with a list. The fruit basket remained on the table, untouched. A single pineapple ring gleamed in its center, like a coin placed on a grave. Somewhere, deep in the stars, a war had already started. Only one side knew it. Space shimmered in layered shades of blue as the Terran diplomatic shuttle approached the Zaraki warship Vulgrin Ascendant. The cruiser's hull gleamed like a blade freshly drawn, polished steel in the void, bristling with kinetic turrets and ion spires. The ship was a fortress, a cathedral to imperial pride, and by Zaraki standards, an eternal symbol of dominance. John Vardes stepped off the shuttle with a duffel bag slung casually over one shoulder and an expression of polite curiosity worn like cologne. A thin mist hissed beneath his shoes as the docking bay pressurized. No one greeted him. Zaraki etiquette didn't allow for ceremonial welcomes to species considered lesser. Humans, after all, were still new to galactic diplomacy, emotionally volatile, stubborn, unpredictable. The Zaraki found it amusing that Earth had sent a consultant instead of a warrior or ambassador. Vardes didn't seem to mind. He adjusted his tie, checked his cufflinks, and walked down the hangar corridor with the unhurried poise of someone who had arrived early for a dinner reservation. The air inside the ship smelled of heated alloy and synthetic oils. Everything buzzed, faintly but constantly, like a nervous hum trying to act brave. A squad of Zaraki guards, 8 feet tall, armored in chitinous plating, materialized from a side corridor and fell into a tight flank formation. Their leader, Commander Jernak, had his upper mandibles painted in crimson, indicating combat honor. He sneered. "Human, we weren't told you were armed." Vardes smiled pleasantly and raised his hands. "I'm not, unless you count sarcasm and a few government-issued trauma responses." Jernak didn't laugh. Zaraki rarely did. Vardes's ID chip pinged authorization, and the guard stepped aside, watching him with narrow, unblinking eyes. He proceeded through the corridor, nodding at the occasional security camera. He moved like a man who knew the dimensions of every room he hadn't yet seen. The central tower of the warship loomed ahead, a great obsidian structure that stretched through multiple decks. It pulsed with data and traffic, a digital heart pumping directives. Vardes entered an elevator, alone. Once the doors sealed, he exhaled slowly. The facade dropped, not entirely, but enough. His shoulders straightened. He pulled a small earpiece from his pocket and slipped it in. Voice check. "This is Vardes. On board. No interference." A faint buzz answered him. "Copy that," came the voice on the other end. "Female. Flat. Professional. Protocol Raven is green. You're now live." Vardes didn't smile this time. "I've confirmed infrastructure. Ship design matches stolen blueprints. They've upgraded internal countermeasures." "Understood. Target. Commander Kratjuan. Secondary priority. Sabotage defensive grid, internal power relays, and propulsion hierarchy. I'll improvise the rest." "You always do." The connection cut. The elevator stopped. Vardes adjusted his jacket and stepped into the conference chamber. It was a brutalist room. Sharp angles, metallic gray, spikes rising from the walls like teeth. And at the far end, sitting atop a throne that was part console, part iron sculpture, was Commander Kratjuan. He was massive even for a Zaraki, his exoskeleton dark as old oil, lined with golden data implants. 2 of his 6 eyes tracked Vardes. The others didn't bother. So, Kratjuan said, voice thick and low, "They sent the soft one." Vardes dipped his head. "John Vardes, Earth's empathy consultant." Kratjuan's mandibles twitched. "Empathy. Is that a form of human cowardice?" Vardes chuckled. "Only when practiced correctly." He stepped forward, extended a hand. Kratjuan stared at it, unmoving. "I brought tea," Vardes added, gesturing to the satchel. "Mint. From the Appalachians. Supposed to calm the nerves." Kratjuan gestured to a seat with a single claw. Vardes sat, crossing one leg over the other. "You understand, I'm not here to discuss the fruit basket." Kratjuan grunted. "Good. That gift was not my idea." "I assumed." Vardes leaned forward. "Let's speak plainly, Commander. You authorized the strike on Earth's orphanage." "No," Kratjuan replied. "I merely allowed a subordinate the latitude to make a decision. That subordinate used Imperial hardware and Zaraki encryption. So either your command is leaking or your empire is lying. Watch your tone, human." Vardes blinked. "Why? You'll take offense." Kratjuan slammed one clawed fist onto the console, which shuddered under the force. "You insult the sovereignty of the Zaraki Empire." "No," Vardes said evenly. "I'm suggesting that you've confused sovereignty with license to kill children." Silence fell like a dropped stone. Kratjuan's voice lowered. "You think Earth frightens us?" Vardes studied him a moment. "No," he said. "Not yet." A moment later, the meeting was declared inconclusive, and Vardes was escorted to guest quarters under light guard. The room was utilitarian, no windows, just one table, one cot, one wash basin. Vardes sat on the bed and removed his shoes. The camera in the corner blinked red. He faced it. "Requesting extra pillow," he said cheerfully. A long silence. Then he turned away, reached under the cot, and retrieved a strip of folded fabric embedded with microfiber circuitry. From his duffel, he pulled 3 more components: a flattened drone case, a capsule containing nanoroutes, and a single hollow coin. He assembled them with expert precision. The drone was no larger than a rat, made of dark polymer designed to mask itself from Zeraki sensors. He placed it on the ground and whispered, "Scout." It zipped off into the ventilation shaft. 30 minutes later, it returned with a blinking feed of the ship's internal systems, highlighted pathways to the power core, security servers, and munitions bay. Vardes studied the layout. "Sloppy," he muttered. "Too centralized. Redundant nodes with poor shielding. You built a battleship with a spinal tap." Then to the drone. Path 1, sabotage cycle, A23. Path 2, relay junctions, corridor gamma. The drone whirred in acknowledgement. He stared at the blinking hologram for another few seconds. Then he retrieved a small leather-bound book from his bag. Flipped it open. The pages were handwritten. Names, ages, doodles in the margins, stars, cats, stick figures holding hands. He ran a finger down the page until he reached one name. "Anika," he murmured. 7. Favorite color, orange. Favorite game, pretending to be an asteroid. He closed the book, set it gently on the table, and stood. The next 3 hours were surgical. The drone scrambled internal surveillance logs. Vardes moved in phases, disabling corridor sensors, uploading malware into shield protocols, and replacing air filtration coding with corrupted variables that would cause false oxygen alerts in 6 critical chambers. He rewired one junction to overload at 0400, calibrated the escape pods to lock shut on command, and tampered with the intercoms to repeat civilian evacuation orders if the ship detected internal gunfire. Each move was clean, quiet, clinical. By the 4th hour, he stood in the observation deck of engineering, a wide open space filled with hums and arc light, watching the ship's primary power core pulse rhythmically, like the heart of some slumbering god. One of the Zeraki engineers noticed him. "You shouldn't be in here." Vardes smiled. "Of course not." The engineer took a step forward. Vardes didn't move. "I got turned around," he said casually. "These ships, they all look the same on the inside, don't they?" The engineer opened his mouth to reply. Vardes moved. 3 steps forward. A flick of the wrist. A syringe jammed under the mandible. The alien dropped silently. Vardes caught the body and laid it gently behind a console. He looked up at the core one more time, then turned and left. By the time the ship's night cycle alarms echoed through the corridors, Vardes was back in his guest room, brushing his teeth with deliberate strokes. The camera blinked again. He winked at it. Then he sat on the bed, opened the leather book, and added a line. "Kratjuan, pending." He tapped his finger against the page, once, twice, then looked up at the ceiling. "This one's for Anika." And then, softly, barely above a whisper, he added, "They think I'm just a consultant." He clicked off the light. Darkness took the room. The ship sailed quietly through the stars, unaware that a virus had been planted in its bones, that the man they had tolerated as a bureaucratic inconvenience had spent the night redesigning their tomb. In 2 cycles, the war would begin. They just didn't know they'd already lost. It started with a whisper in the wiring. At exactly 0400 ship time, deep within the nerve cluster of the Volgren Ascendant, a relay junction hiccuped. Nothing dramatic, just a skipped pulse, like a breath held too long. Seconds later, the environmental controls registered a false oxygen saturation in maintenance wing gamma. The system responded as programmed, sealed the corridor, rerouted ventilation, and initiated an all-clear alert. Nothing to panic about. Glitches happened. 32 seconds after that, the munitions bay's self-calibrating targeting matrix began recalculating its own schematics. An impossible command override looped through its logic sequence until it returned an answer that didn't exist. The targeting systems then defaulted to factory mode. Then the lights dimmed, not all at once, but in slow, cascading waves. Deck by deck, room by room. On the bridge, Commander Kratjuan's eyes narrowed as the reports began flashing across his console. Environmental faults. Targeting matrix offline. Lighting malfunction on Deck 14. Explain. Unknown at this time, Commander, one of the analysts stammered. Possibly a cascading failure. Diagnostics are incomplete. Kratjuan's mandibles clicked with restrained fury. Then complete them. Now, he rose from his command throne and paced toward the main display, which flickered with the topographic outline of the ship. Faults glowed red, but they were scattered, disjointed, inconsistent with any known attack vector. It didn't feel like sabotage. Not yet. And that's what unnerved him most. Below, 2 engineering teams were dispatched to investigate the anomalies. Neither would return a report. John Vardes was already in the ducts. Crawling like a thought through the ventilation spine, he moved in silence. No weapons. No armor. Just gloves, intent, and the drone, now acting as his eyes in 10 corridors at once. He paused above a maintenance junction. Listened. 2 Zaraki technicians entered beneath him, arguing in harsh clicks and hisses. One cursed the software. The other blamed inferior wiring. Neither looked up. Vardes exhaled, unfolded, dropped down behind them with the grace of a falling feather. The first died quickly, a neck tendon, severed by piano wire, looped through Vardes's fingers. The second managed a startled hiss before Vardes struck his spinal node with the edge of his palm. Instant neural shock. The body crumpled. He pulled both into the wall recess, locked the door behind him, and whispered to the drone. Phase 2. Activate Pulse Echo. The drone zipped away. Moments later, across the ship's corridors, the intercoms buzzed to life and broadcast a message. Emergency evacuation protocol. Deck collapse detected. Secure command authority. All non-essential personnel report to survival pods. It was a lie, but it didn't matter. Panic was a better weapon than explosives. Kratjuan watched as 50% of his crew began abandoning stations. This is false, he bellowed. Disable that feed. We're trying, shouted his comms officer. The system's not responding. He slammed a claw onto the controls. Find that human. Consultant Vardes is currently unaccounted for. Last visual was 13 hours ago. A dangerous quiet fell. Kratjuan turned toward his personal guard. Deploy hunters. I want him broken and dragged here. Alive. The guards saluted and stormed from the bridge. Elsewhere, on Deck 11, Vardes moved with perfect timing. The lights flickered. He walked through them like smoke, always at the edge of visibility. A patrol turned a corner. Freeze. He did. The Zaraki raised their weapons. You are under military arrest for acts of terrorism against an Imperial ship. Vardes smiled. Gentlemen, I think we're skipping introductions. They hesitated. He took one slow step forward. I could explain, or I could demonstrate. They opened fire. Too late. Vardes dropped, rolled, and vanished behind a bulkhead. Their shots peppered the wall. No hits. One of the soldiers advanced and found Vardes waiting behind a supply rack, blade drawn, movements fast enough to leave after images. The alien gurgled once, then hit the floor. His partner panicked, turned, fired randomly. The corridor lights failed. In the dark, a voice floated. Do you know what fear smells like to a human? It smells like burning sugar. It smells like home. The last soldier screamed before he hit the floor. Kratjuan was now watching his ship unravel on every monitor. There is no invasion force. No breach, muttered his strategist. He's alone. He's not alone, Kratjuan growled. He is the breach. The doors to the command bridge sealed tight. Purged the entire central corridor. Gas it. One of the junior officers stammered, but that risks the primary conduits. Do it. They did. The corridor hissed and fumed with crimson mist. The atmosphere thickened. The heat rose. But when the mists cleared, the only thing they found was a folded suit jacket on the floor, perfectly placed, with a note tucked inside. The note read, "Too warm in here. Needed to freshen up." Krajuan stared at it as if it might explode, then bellowed, "Arm all internal drones. He is not to reach engineering." It was too late. Vardes walked through the power core chamber like a ghost. The lights dimmed just for him. His steps left no echo. He carried nothing visible, yet the air around him seemed to shift in anticipation. The final layer of sabotage was manual, a small capsule he inserted into the feedback regulator. A click, a pulse. The core stuttered. Warning lights ignited in a frenzy. He turned and waited. Krajuan arrived minutes later, flanked by 4 elite guards, armed and armored in riot exosuits. He stormed forward, eyes wild. "You," he snarled. "What are you?" Vardes didn't move. 67 children, he said softly. Krajuan raised his weapon. "You're a species of weaklings and martyrs. We bombed a nursery. You send a librarian." Vardes's tone remained casual. "And yet here you are, on your knees in your own engine room, screaming at a librarian while your ship burns behind your eyes." He gestured to the power core. 3 minutes until internal pressure collapse. "You lie. You'll see." One of the guards lunged. Vardes stepped aside, turned, caught the soldier's arm, and redirected the momentum into a spinning toss that slammed the armored brute into the reactor panel. The next attacked with a blade. Vardes ducked under, drove his palm up into the alien's ribcage, grabbed his helmet, and cracked it backward. The crunch was wet. The third never got close. The drone zipped from the shadows, planted itself on his visor, and detonated in a silent EMP burst that collapsed the suit. The last one ran. Krajuan raised both weapons, but Vardes was already moving, ducking, weaving, disarming him mid-shot. A knee, an elbow, a twist of the wrist. They ended in a grapple near the railing, reactor heat pulsing below. Krajuan snarled, "You think you can scare an empire into shame?" Vardes didn't snarl back. He whispered, "No, but I can teach you grief." He drove his fist into Krajuan's chest plate, cracked through it, pulled the emergency oxygen tube, and pushed. The commander gasped, choking, twitching, until Vardes lowered him to the ground with surprising gentleness. He stared at the fallen figure, then walked to the central console and activated the final broadcast override. The Zaraki ship's comms lit up. Vardes's voice rang through every corridor, into every chamber. "This is Earth. We do not issue ultimatums. We leave reminders." A pause. 70 children. We remember their names. He uploaded the list. 70 names, one after the other, scrolling in bright white across every screen. Then he activated the escape override protocol and vanished into the service tunnel. Minutes later, the power core destabilized. Not an explosion. Not yet. Just a quiet disassembly of every hierarchy the ship needed to stay alive. Alarms wailed. Lights failed. Systems collapsed. And above it all, drifting through the silence like a thread pulled through fabric, was the unmistakable absence of John Vardes. When the rescue beacons were finally triggered, automatic, impersonal, the Volgren Ascendant was already dark. The flagship of the Zaraki Empire lost its lights, then its engines, then its air. It never found its human, but it did find something else. In the central chamber, next to Krajuan's cooling body, was a folded piece of Terran paper. No threats, no demands, just 3 words, handwritten in careful script. Never again. The high seat station spun in quiet, orbital rhythm above a blue-tinted gas giant, unaware it had become the epicenter of a fear it hadn't yet named. Within its walls, murmurs moved faster than light. Whispers passed between empires, through silver tongues and coiled protocols, each attempting to translate a singular, human action that defied expectation, category, and control. The Volgren Ascendant was gone. Not destroyed in war, not by external attack. Simply absent. 7,000 trained Zaraki soldiers. 1 battleship. No survivors. No distress signals. No black box. Accept a note. Ambassadors from 63 civilizations now crowded the Grand Chamber with quiet urgency. Not because they loved Earth, but because Earth had been quiet after losing its children, and then louder in their silence than any of them were prepared for. At the center of it all stood John Vardes. He walked back into the council chamber the same way he'd left it, alone. Clean suit, calm steps, that same unshakable smile. But something in the way he moved made seasoned negotiators shift in their seats. Not because he threatened, but because he didn't need to. He sat, folded his hands, said nothing. The moderator Ishali rose slowly. Her light flickered faintly in nervous pulses. Earth is recognized. Consultant Vardes. The council awaits your account of the incident involving the Volgren ascendant. Vardes tilted his head politely. Of course. A tragic event. Tragic, hissed the Glaric ambassador. 7,000 warriors vanished. Vardes nodded. Yes. A tragedy. We count 70 children. That's our metric. The chamber rippled. Language barriers couldn't mask the shift from discomfort to dread. Ishali's voice was slower now, each word weighed. Do you deny Earth's involvement? I didn't say that. Then, do you confirm? No, Vardes said mildly. I confirm nothing except this. Earth is no longer waiting. A moment of silence swelled between their words, heavy and sacred. Kratuan's empire had called an accident, then a misunderstanding, then sabotage. But none of them expected retaliation without declaration. They didn't imagine Earth capable of bypassing fleets, systems, protocol, waging war with nothing but one man and a list. And that, precisely, was the lesson. You misunderstand us, Vardes continued, voice gentle. Humans aren't loud because we're angry. We're loud because we love. Our war cries are lullabies. Our vengeance? Funeral poetry. An Oanari diplomat muttered, You call this poetry? Vardes met his eyes with kindness that somehow froze the room. I call it consequence. The Ilian twins whispered between themselves in high-pitched resonance, consulting their internal tactical calculus. One leaned forward, speaking carefully. Your kind strikes without warning. That is not diplomacy. That is terrorism. Vardes's eyes softened. We tried diplomacy. We received fruit. Then silence. So we adjusted. Then what are you now? The twins asked in unison. What is Earth? Vardes didn't blink. We are a species with no gods. But we remember names. And if there is a higher court than memory, I've not seen it. Another diplomat leaned forward, her spines twitching. Is Earth declaring war? No. Then what is this? Vardes stood slowly and pulled from his jacket a folded page, creases worn soft, edges frayed. He placed it on the central dais and stepped back. It was the same list. 70 names, children, ages, dates. He said nothing as it unfolded under the chamber's lights, the words blinking softly into visibility, rendered in all 63 official council languages. And what does that achieve? Asked a bitter diplomat from a borderless mining civilization. What is the purpose of this gesture? Vardes's voice was still quiet, but there was no softness left in it. It achieves memory. Someone scoffed. Memory isn't law. Vardes looked at them like a teacher might look at a child who just asked if fire was wet. No, he said. It's stronger. The Glaric ambassador, agitated now, rippled with rage. You suggest we cower before grief. I suggest, Vardes replied, that you consider this. Earth does not seek conquest. We seek closure. But if closure is denied, we learn to sew it ourselves. With steel. The chamber fell deathly still. Behind the dais, the moderator activated a silent vote panel. 1,000 lights blinked in response. Every member race would cast judgment. But none of them felt like judges anymore. Not today. Earth had smiled, and beneath that smile was something ancient. Not brutality, not madness, but decision. Cold, elegant decision. The vote passed. Effective immediately, the Galactic Concord would recognize Earth's Clause 8A, the protective vow. Any harm inflicted upon Terran miners will be considered an act of war. No objections. Vardes did not gloat. He bowed. Thank you. Earth accepts the Council's acknowledgement. He turned to leave. But the Oanari elder stood. Consultant Vardes. Vardes paused. The elder spoke with a depth that shook the air. Why didn't you announce your intent? Vardes regarded him with honest consideration. Because if I told you what we were going to do, you would have tried to stop us. And if we had, Vardes' smile was slow, sorrowful. Then we'd be having a very different meeting, likely in orbit around your memorial. The elder sat down in silence. As Vardes left the chamber, the gathered ambassadors didn't speak. Not until the doors closed behind him. Outside, the corridor was empty save for a child. She couldn't have been more than 6, hair like shadow, eyes wide. She stood beside a memorial display, one that flickered with the names of the lost. Vardes crouched beside her. You okay, sweetheart? She pointed to a name. That was my brother. Vardes' voice caught in his chest. What was he like? He made up words. Like Blorpadoodle. He thought space cows were real. Vardes smiled. He sounds like a hero. The girl looked up at him. Did you stop the monsters? No, he said gently. I taught them how to run. She nodded, took his hand. Together, they walked the corridor in silence. Far above them, orbiting silently behind coated shields, a new Terran vessel emerged from slipspace. No weapons. No name. Just a mission. Its AI was programmed to remember. Its cargo was memory. And its orders were simple. Never again.